Hey Matt, today we're going to do a parallel clamp test to find out which one's the best bang for the buck and which ones perform the best under pressure. Get it? Pressure? First off, this video is not sponsored. I purchased every one of these clamps with the exception of two, the Bessey and the Symbol, which were gifts from a friend last year. So I've had those for a year. The rest of these were purchased specifically for this review so I can give you my honest feedback on it. And by the end of this review, I want you to be able to pick with confidence which brand would work best in your shop for your budget. So I'm going to give you a best overall, best for your budget, and then also the one that I wouldn't waste my money on. They're all going to be in the same test. So we're going to do the exact same thing on all of them and see how they perform. We're going to test bar deflection, jaw deflection. I'll drop them a few times on the concrete and see how that works out. And then we'll also try a panel and see how, if we get into deflection in the panel. Let's test it and see what happens. Interesting enough, several of them are out of square from the factory or from the package on the top head. This one is slightly out of square. I say slightly, that's not a lot of distance to have that much room. So it's fairly out of square. The Irwin is the worst as far as being out of square. There's a giant gap there between the bottom. The Jorgensen is almost perfect, almost. There's a tiny gap down there. The Jet is near perfect as well, very similar to the Jorgensen. Bremen brand is about the same as, maybe a little worse than the Jorgensen. It's a little out of square as well. Symbol brand is out of square up here. In other words, it's flexing out, barely. And the eHoma is the same way. It's a little out at the top. The construction and fit and finish of each are different in their own way. The Irwin and Jorgensen both have these bars that are very slick. In other words, there's no ribbing on there to prevent that jaw from sliding up and down, or to catch, rather. And we'll talk about that a little more later. The handle designs is going to be really personal preference. My personal preference, I really like the Irwin. The Jorgensen is by far my favorite handles, the most comfortable to me. The Jet also has a really nice handle design. The Besseys they're pretty good. You know, they're all right. And the Bora also has a really nice one. The Harbor Freight one is an oblong shape, so it feels weird in the hand. They all include the little kickstand on the bottom side of the bar that allows you to lay that parallel clamp flat and it remain level with the work surface. But only 4 of them come with these little blocks that attach to the bar, and that keeps stock up off of your work surface. Interestingly enough, the Bora only comes with 1 each, so it's kind of useless unless you're gluing up something in this little area. The Besseys come with 2, eHoma and Symbol all come with 2 of those. As far as ease of use goes, the Jorgensen and the Irwin both have a problem. These jaws won't stay up. If you bump that, you can push that handle in and make it stay, but if you bump it, it's going to come crashing down and it actually hit my hand. This operates exactly the same way. They look to be identical clamps with the exception of their head designs a little different. The Jet brand, however, does have this little trigger that you pull, and that allows it to move. When you release this trigger, it does not move. I like that on this clamp. I've not seen that on any other parallel clamp. It's just a lever you're going to pull when you need to adjust the clamp up and down. It's a very good design. The rest of these clamps, like the Harbor Freight, you have to push and push and push, and then pull and pull. And that raises and lowers your clamp or moves it in and out. What's nice is they stay where they're supposed to. You can shake them. Unless you bump that handle, it's not going to fall. But even if you do bump the handle, it doesn't free fall like the others. Out of all the clamps, the Bora slides the least easy. It's got a lot more friction and tension to it. It's just a lot more cumbersome to move. This is my least favorite as far as how to adjust it. Clamping them down to the cast iron table with this jaw deflection test, I just wanted to see if I put a lot of pressure on there, how much deflection was going to be in those jaws and how much out of parallel they would be. The Bessey and the Irwin performed very similar, and you just saw about a 1/16 inch of deflection in the jaws. You did see them raising up, especially the Irwin. When you crank down on it, right there at the jaw, it would come up off the table, and I think that was the bar bending a little bit. The eHoma, Jet, and Symbol clamps all about a 32nd of an inch out of parallel. It's not bad. It wasn't bad at all. Again, you did see a little bit of light clearance coming under those bars at that table, right at those jaws. The Jorgensen, Bremen, and Bora all had minimal actual deflection there. The bars did bend up on some of those, but the actual parallel of the jaws remained about the same. All right, glue test. We know if we work with these clamps any at all, there's going to be glue that's going to fall on them at some time, at some point, some way, somehow. It's just going to happen. Now, how hard is it to remove that glue will depend on the type of material that's used, coating that's on there, etc. I haven't put anything on them. I do recommend Outlaws board butter or some other type of paste wax or something. If you'll apply that on your clamps before they glue up, it'll make the glue not stick to it. Power tip for you. But these haven't had anything on them. So I'm just gonna Titebond 3, put it on there. We're gonna let that dry overnight. I'll come back tomorrow and see how well it comes off. My theory is the ones with the ribs on the material will be harder to get out because the glue will be down in the rib, obviously, and then the one with the slick shaft will not. All right, I let these set overnight, and trying to get the glue off of these, I was actually very surprised by one. The rest are all about the same. What surprised me was the slick bar clamps, the Jorgensen and the Irwin. I thought that the glue would peel off of those because there's no texturing on the front edge of the clamp bar, but it's not. It stuck to them extremely bad and is very difficult to get off, as most of the time they are. However, the Jet performed much, much better, and it's the only one where the glue just peels off with ease, like you see here. I mean, it just comes off of there just like it comes off of this silicone mat. You just peel it right off. And the reason for that is Jet is the only one that has this shinier metal that has some type of finishing done to it. The rest of it feels kind of like a satin feel. This is more of a glossy feel, but the Jet performed best in this test. Best in the test. I cut this block just long enough that my square would sit on it so that I could check the deflection of the jaws themselves and try to eliminate that bar deflection to see which one's jaws were actually going out of parallel. The worst offenders, Bora, Irwin, and Jorgensen, all three had major deflection. The Bora probably the worst at almost 1/4 of an inch, and then the Jorgensen and the Irwin right there behind them, probably 3/16 of an inch. That's pretty bad. The Jet, EHOMA, Symbol, Bessie, as well as the Harbor Freight Bremen performed all about equally the same. It was actually quite impressive to see the Harbor Freight in the mix with those others. So one of the main reasons you buy a parallel clamp or parallel clamps is for panels, tabletops, things like that. And so I thought, I need to do that. So I jointed these 3 pieces of walnut just like I was going to, if I was going to make a tabletop, and got them ready to glue up. From there, I did an end of the jaw test and the base of the jaw. In other words, laying on the bar. Normally, you're not going to be gluing up at the end of the jaw, but I did want to see how strong the jaws were and see how much deflection was there. I started with the Bremen or Harbor Freight brand right on the bar, just like you would normally glue up a panel. I use normal pressure on all of these just like I would on any other panel. I noticed on the Bremen brand that the panel stayed flat against the bar and there was minimal deflection, none really. When I moved the panel up to the front of the jaw, there was quite a bit of deflection. You can see where it was raised up off of the tabletop quite a bit, but that's not really a normal circumstance unless you were doing like a cabinet or something like that. But there was significant deflection of about 1/8 inch. On the Irwin brand, there was slight deflection away from the bar, but when you moved it to the front of the jaws, I saw significant deflection, and it even raised the jaws up off of the table. Really bad. When I measured both the front and the back of the Irwin, it was about 3/16 of an inch out of square or parallel. The EHOMA and Symbol brands, I can't tell apart from the looks of them other than the labels on them. They're basically the same clamp. I would venture to guess they're probably coming out of the exact same factory. Just a wild guess. And they performed almost identical at about 3/16 of an inch out of parallel at the top of the jaw. At the base of the jaw, they did fairly well and stayed almost parallel. They did have almost a 1/16 out of parallel at the base. It caused slight deflection and caused the panel to bow just slightly. On the Jet and Bessie, they performed extremely similar. The Bessie and the Jet both stayed exactly parallel at 23 7/8 inches on the top and bottom of the measurements of the jaws. Perfectly parallel. The panel was almost perfectly flat, maybe a tiny bit of imperfection in there, easily fixable with some cauls or some type of joint clamping thingy-majigs. And when I raised the panel to the top of the jaw and squeezed them in, identical results there at about 5/16 of an inch of deflection. Next up was the Bora clamp, clamping normal pressure. There was about 3/16 of an inch out of parallel at the base, and then when I raised it to the top, it was by far the worst, as about a 1/2 inch out of parallel, and you could just really see it bowing and bending up off of the table. Quite significant. Jorgensen brand was about a 1/16 inch out of parallel on the base. When I moved it up to the end of the jaw, perfectly parallel. There was a slight bend in the panel, but the jaws remained parallel.
A couple of things I noticed while using these clamps in normal function or normal application was the Jorgensen, Bora, and Irwin brands took quite a bit longer to actually get tight because of their thread. It was probably a finer thread count. It just took a little bit more twisting to get them tight, whereas the other ones, after a couple of turns, everything was tight. All right, I've stepped outside because I don't have concrete floors. I got that rubber matting down in there. We're gonna do a little durability test, and I'm gonna drop them 4 times each from about waist high. I'll kind of give you the rundown of what happens. If anything breaks, major fails, you'll get to see that. If not, we'll talk about it back inside. In no particular order, this is the Jorgensen brand. I'm assuming waist high, it gets knocked off the workbench is kind of my premise behind this test. We'll do flat, we'll do straight up, we'll do handle. See how that works. Ready? No worries, just the piece that was already there. Bessie. Jet. And the end cap popped off. Irwin. Bremen, Harbor Freight. EHOMA. Nothing major, but the back piece did pop off. Symbol. Bora. After the drop test, I kind of inspected all of these, and the Harbor Freight one, the top head was about to come off because this pin that holds it on was popped out. Not that that's a big deal, but if you drop it enough, that pin will likely come out of there. Whereas the construction of the Bessie seems to be a lot better because it has rivets in there that help hold that head on there securely. You don't have to worry about those popping out. If I'm watching a review like this, I want to know a few things. I want to know how long the warranty is on these clamps. In other words, how long the manufacturer believes they're made to last. It's kind of the way I determine what a warranty looks like. Also, I want to know which one's the best bang for the buck and which one's the best for most people. And that's kind of the way I'm trying to go about this review and decide on which one to tell you that I think is a good option. With warranty in mind, the Bora and the Symbol both have a 1-year warranty. Bora, straight from their chat, said 1 year because I couldn't find it on their website. Symbol, sold by Woodpeckers, which I'm a big fan of. You can see the tools hanging on the wall back there. I like their tools. This is something they sell, and they say that the warranty's 1 year. Could be longer. I don't know what that means, but for that reason, I'm out. Update on the Symbol brand. I emailed Woodpeckers and asked them about the warranty. They initially told me 1 year, sometimes more, depending, whatever that means. A while later, like a few days later, I got a reply back saying, yeah, they're actually a lifetime warranty. So there's a little bit of mixed signals going on there. Still doesn't really change my opinion on the clamp or the results of this test. I would assume the EHOMA brand, which is very similar, almost the same as the Symbol, will also be a 1-year warranty. I don't know because I reached out to Woodcraft who sell these and I never got a response on the warranty, and it's not listed anywhere that I could find. So for that reason, I'm out on that one. Also note, the Bora was the worst performing clamp out of any of these on the table. I would not recommend these personally. That's my opinion. You may have a different experience, but these are just not well made compared to the other ones, in my opinion. I would avoid those. Jorgensen and Irwin both showed a little promise, except for these slick bars allows these jaws to fall and crash into your hand too much. I would avoid these for that main purpose. They do both have lifetime or limited lifetime warranties, and they do both have very comfortable handles. But the Jorgensen really did deflect quite a bit on the end of the jaw, and the Irwin performed fairly well, but it's just something I would avoid simply because of how this jaw slides too easily. Jet is by far the most expensive clamp on the list at 80 bucks, and for that reason, I don't think it's worth it compared to the other options you're gonna have. It's a very good clamp. It worked very nice. It stayed parallel for most of the test, or very close to. Little deflection. The handle design's fine. On the drop test, it worked. The end cap did pop off. Not a huge deal, but I just think it's too expensive compared to what you get with the other ones. And for that reason, I'm out on that one. Bessie versus Bremen, or Harbor Freight brand, right? In my opinion, best bang for the buck out of all these tests is, and I was shocked by the Harbor Freight brand. It performed well. It performed very well compared to the others, especially comparing them to Jet and Bessey, the top players in the game. I think you're going to be satisfied with these if you're on a budget. $35 a piece, it's going to be hard to beat that price point. And they have a limited lifetime warranty as well. The Bessey, though, is the best clamp for most people, in my opinion. Limited lifetime warranty. It's a strong clamp. It lasts a long time, and they're only about $53-ish a piece most of the time. A lot of times you can get those on sale for cheaper. I always leave a link in the description to all of these if you're interested. There you have it. 731 gives a fist bump of approval to the Bessey overall and the Bremen as a budget pick. Go check them out. I think you'll be happy with either one. Which one's your pick? Which one do you think is the best overall clamp for most people? Comment that below. If you like this video, click that box right there. It's going to take you to the next video. Click in the box to get you the big old virtual fist bump. Also, I'll put another one of my favorites there. If you like this type video, comment that. Let me know also. I'll try to do more.